And let me set the scene of what's going on here in this 1969, 70, 70, 71. The National Guard is gunning down white students at Kent State. Black Panthers and other black militant groups are shooting white police and killing them in the streets, and sometimes going to court and getting acquitted. Things like COINTELPRO, the Chicago Police Department, executing the young leader of the Chicago Black Panther Party.
Officer Davis, you are a black officer. The community now is outraged, feeling that you and other black officers have participated in what has been described as an assassination of two young black men. Do you have a response to this, sir?
Well, I'd like to say that all the colored officers there, I think they felt the same way I did. We were responding to a violation of the law. We established our right to be there by ascertaining and getting a search warrant before we went there. And when we went there, legally, we were attacked illegally, and we resorted to what was necessary to do. And I've heard that we assassinated a man in his sleep. I can't understand how they would immediately think that 5 black officers would stand by and allow or watch and condone white officers kill a man in his sleep. There was no necessity to kill a man in the first place if we wanted to get rid of him. The man's going to penitentiary in 13 days, so there's no necessity to kill him. And it's a reflection of my integrity, and I think of the other officers' integrity, to think that we would stand there and allow this to happen. And if officers go somewhere legally, I think they should be received legally by law-abiding persons. Now, they established that we come into an apartment shooting, blazing away without any warning. I can't understand how they can be so neglectful of their leader's safety to allow him to be killed in his bed without awakening him before we could get to him. And then all of this shooting and blazing away, he must be an awful sound sleeper.
And so it was a very violent atmosphere, people killing police, getting away with it, police killing people and getting away with it. And so here we have at San Quentin, this violence is now in this prison atmosphere and is getting pretty intense. And George Jackson and his 2 cohorts that are alleged to have thrown the white prison guard off the tier at San Quentin, they're charged with murder. And George Jackson had a 17-year-old brother on the outs named Jonathan.
I think I would be the first to know if there was. I'm saying that there was no conspiracy, that Jonathan, a 17-year-old man-child, was working according to the dictates of his own mind.
Jonathan, with a gun registered to radical activist black female professor Angela Davis, the gun was registered to Angela Davis. He storms the Marin County Courthouse. Marin County is one of the richest counties in America now. It's up in the Bay Area. It's where San Quentin is. He storms the Marin County Courthouse. He grabs a judge, tries to kidnap him. He's going to try to force, I guess, them to release his brother in exchange for the judge. There's a shootout. He's killed. George Jackson's brother is killed. Then I think there's a guard killed. There's some prisoners that were in the courtroom killed. Crazy, crazy scene. So that's 1971. Fast forward to 1972. There's this ongoing race war between the BGF and, well, it's not really between the BGF and Aryan Brotherhood. It's white people and black people in California prisons are killing each other. There's also stuff going on with the Hispanic inmates. So prior to George Jackson's brother Jonathan being killed in the courthouse attempted kidnapping and shootout, Jackson was already a celebrity from the publishing of his book, Soledad Brother, Letters from Prison. And this book had been kind of arranged and edited by his lawyer at the time, Faye Stender, a white female lawyer. She had gotten the French philosopher who was really famous at the time, Jean Genet, to write a foreword, and this book sold hundreds of thousands of copies, so the funds went to his legal defense and other people in custody. But Faye Stender then removed herself as his lawyer because she claimed George Jackson was pressuring her to bring a gun to prison in her briefcase, because lawyers aren't subject to the same sorts of getting checked as other people. And I remember I was in jail somewhere, and a guy always was high on heroin, and he was a sort of a celebrity, and I found out his lawyer was bringing him heroin all of his legal visits so he could spend his whole time in the county jail because he had a bad case, just high on heroin. So lawyers do that kind of stuff. So Faye Stender removed herself from the case. Stephen Bingham's the new lawyer. Stephen Bingham one day in 1972 comes to see George Jackson, and when Bingham leaves, Jackson has a .32 caliber automatic. He and 6 other inmates try to escape. There's some guards killed. George Jackson himself is killed. Stephen Bingham, the lawyer, goes on the run for about 13 years. He's eventually taken into custody, or no, he turns himself in, I think, in California in the mid-'80s, and he goes on trial and he's acquitted. And you might say, well, how was he acquitted? Well, the defense was that the guards, the white guards, actually gave George Jackson a gun so that they would have an excuse to kill him. And the jury believed that, and Stephen Bingham was found not guilty, and he ended up becoming, he got re-let onto the California bar, I think, not too long ago.
Well, for the past 10 or 11 years, I've expected to hear that he was dead anyway. So, although the shock was there from the radio, I still expected to hear it someday, but not from the radio.
Your son died is fairly well known. Do you believe that? Do you disbelieve that? And do you have any other possibilities? What do you think really
No, I don't believe that, because I don't think my son was mad, and I don't think he was an idiot. And I don't think that he would do the things that they said he did. You know, these people have for years gotten away with saying anything that they want to say because they have absolute power over those men. Those men can't even sneeze unless they want them to. They can say anything that they want to say, and we have to take it. You know that. Did they let any of you go in there and find out and talk to the people what happened? You only took their word for what happened. And that's the way it's always been.
What do you think happened?
I think they expected me to go and sit in the corner and cry and not really look at George. But I did. I looked at him. I saw everything that happened to him. He was shot more than once. In fact, his body was mutilated. George was a fine-looking man. But you wouldn't have been able to recognize him after they got through with him. It seemed as if they just did things to him for a vengeance, you know.
Prison is such a unnatural environment that any weird thing that happens in there, or any weird thing it does to anybody's brain in there, really doesn't come as a shock to me. To have a bunch of men who don't know each other in close quarters with each other for years on end is so totally out of anything that our brains evolved to do. It's a wonder more and worse, weirder stuff doesn't happen than does. So there was a 16-month trial of what was called the San Quentin Six. Those were the 6 inmates who, along with George Jackson, who was killed, were part of the escape attempt. Several of them were totally acquitted. Now, one famous name you might know from the San Quentin Six, Hugo Yogi Pinell, he became famous as a victim of human rights abuses in the U.S. prison system because he ended up spending 43 years in solitary confinement for his role in that. He was convicted of slitting the throat of 2 guards, though neither of them died. And so Yogi Pinell was in solitary confinement from the early 70s all the way up until 2015 when he was let out, and within a couple days of being let out, 2 Aryan Brotherhood associates who later in wiretaps, it was revealed, earned their shamrock. They became made men for the Aryan Brotherhood, stabbed him to death on the prison yard, which then set off a riot between white and black inmates, I think at New Folsom Prison, or Sacramento Prison. I think inmates call it New Folsom. It's technically Sacramento Prison, I think.
After 70 inmates rioted this afternoon. Betty Hughes shows us when the dust settled, one of California's most notorious prisoners was dead.
His friends called him Yogi Bear, a name that hardly suggests the convicted rapist he was, or the convict who was part of the San Quentin Six.